our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. With all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. 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 Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Hey.
Woo! Air 5.
Yeah, lay it out.
Friends, I invite you to join me this morning in just noticing your breath. Just notice it. You don't need to do anything special with it right now. Just notice the air that you are drawing in and breathing out. And as you notice your breath, I invite you to reflect on how this breath, this air, unites us with every other living creature in this world. The trees breathe the same air as we do, as do the squirrels, the birds of the air, even the fish in the seas in their own way breathe the air that is absorbed into the water. Your ancestors breathed this air. Your descendants will breathe this air. This air that we breathe together is so precious, especially in this time of sickness that steals the breath from us, in this time of grief when people have had their breath stolen from them in the streets with a knee on their neck. Notice your breath. Notice it. Feel how it connects you to the people of your community, to the people of your town, to the people of the world.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know, 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 I know. I know, 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 I know this road, I know this road, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul. unfurl its wings. I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul, I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul, I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul, I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know my fear will burn away, I know my soul is unfurled its wings, unfurled its wings, I know this road, I know this road, I know this road, I know my fear will burn away, I know my soul will unfurl its wings, unfurl its wings, I know this road, I open this road, open, open, fear will open, I know my soul will unfold its wings, I know this road will open.
So as you know, I currently work as a hospital chaplain at the Cleveland VA Medical Center and have for a little over a year now. It is, you could say, the largest congregation that I have ever ministered to, and certainly the most diverse. I have ministered to people with serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. I have ministered to people who suffer from addictions. I have ministered to people who have been in prison, as well as law enforcement officers. I have ministered to World War II veterans, as well as much younger veterans of our more recent wars in the Middle East. I have ministered to African Americans, to adopted Vietnamese children, to white parents. I have ministered to the wives of veterans, and I have ministered to the children of veterans. I have ministered to active climate change deniers, and I have ministered to people who speak very eloquently about racism and white supremacy culture. I have ministered to African American veterans of the Vietnam and Korean wars who came back from those wars to countries that did not recognize their rights as full human beings. I have ministered to people with combat trauma, and I have ministered to people with survivor's guilt because they spent the war safe in an office in Germany. And what I've learned from ministering to all these people and learning how to minister to all these people who are so very, 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 very different from me and from your quote unquote typical Unitarian Universalist, what I've learned has taught me quite a lot actually about church. And so that's what I'm hoping to share with you today, because in the process of learning to minister to these people who may believe so differently from me, who think so differently from me, is that what I've learned is that we have universal human needs. And what I mean is that there are needs that we all have. For instance, a need for safety, a need for belonging, a need for love, a need for comfort, a need to feel special or important, a need for purpose, a need to be connected to something larger than ourselves. These are all universal human needs that people have regardless of age, race, sex, national origin. The difference that comes up is in how we meet these needs. So for instance, let's take the need for safety. Now, many of these veterans are very, very comfortable with guns. And having a weapon with them is one of the ways in which they feel safe because they know that they can protect themselves. But contrast this with my friends back on the West Coast, many of whom grew up in cities, many of whom have never even seen a gun, let alone touched one, let alone know how to fire one. And for them, what they think of are statistics and movies about how having a gun in the home actually increases your risk of dying or being injured in gun violence. And so guns make them feel actively unsafe. And so if you put these two people in a room together and ask them to talk about safety, they will be at very, very, very desperate odds from each other, possibly not even able to understand one another. What do you mean? How could this possibly make you feel unsafe? I know how to use it. I know how to use it responsibly. I will use it to protect us. While the other person says, no, 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 get that away from me. You don't know what kind of accidents could happen with a gun around. And so that's one example of how our definitions, how we meet our universal human needs can give rise to miscommunication, to differences. Another example that I could use is that of one of my cousins, who he and his wife recently learned about the 5 love languages, as written about by Gary Chapman. And they learned that they have very different love languages from each other. For my cousin, his primary love language is physical affection or touch. That is how he gives and receives love, is with back rubs, massages, hugs, kisses, just holding hands, things like that. Meanwhile, his wife, her primary love language is giving and receiving gifts. And so that is how she gives and receives love, is by coming home with a little trinket or something and saying, oh, this just made me think of you. And so there were times when they felt alienated from each other, like they didn't understand, did this other person love them or not? When really it was just that they were speaking different languages. And now that they know that, they can ask each other for what they need. My cousin can ask his wife, could you give me a back rub or could you give me a hug? And she can say to him, I would love it if you got me some flowers for Valentine's Day or something like that. And that has vastly improved their relationship. So where I'm going with this, what this all has to do with church, is that churches are also very diverse populations, even Unitarian Universalist churches, where we might have similar values, and of course adhere to the 7 principles. Nonetheless, in our congregations, there are different ages, different classes, different national origins, different cultures. There are many, many ways in which we can miscommunicate and misunderstand each other at church. And I know that you know that. Probably you've experienced it already, probably multiple times. And so if we think about it in terms of what are our universal human needs and how is it that we meet them differently, I think that is one of the ways in which we can better communicate as churches, in which we can become healthy, strong, vibrant congregations, and more importantly, if we are serious about becoming multicultural, multi-generational congregations, then this is something that we need to understand in order to be able to be more inclusive and more welcoming, is to understand and to realize that while we do have universal human needs, there are ways in which we are very alike. There are also ways in which we are very different. And those ways are in how we meet those needs. What makes us feel safe? What makes us feel loved? What makes us feel like we belong? And so if we are serious about becoming beloved communities, the beloved communities of which the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of, the communities that had eradicated racism and poverty because people of conscience simply will not stand for it, then one of the things that we need to do is to be able to turn to one another and say, what would help you belong here? What would make you feel like you belong? I want to know because I want you to feel like you belong. I want there to be a place for you here in this church, in this congregation, in this family. And once we are able to do that with each other, then we can take what we have learned. We can take this skill into other places, into schools, into workplaces, into city council meetings. We can speak to one another as human beings and listen to one another as human beings. We will know that the other person has needs, just like I do, just like you do, just like we do, and that those needs aren't being met somehow. And how is it that we can help? This is not to say that we should not hold people who have committed harms accountable. We don't make excuses for people who have hurt other people by simply saying, oh, they have needs that weren't being met. No, people who do harm must be held accountable for it. There should be consequences. But we can also listen to each other. We can be compassionate with one another. We can treat one another as whole human beings. And I think that this is one of the ways, at least this is a way that I have learned. This is a way that I have learned to live out the first principle, to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Because for me to be a hospital chaplain at the Cleveland VA Medical Center means that I must be able to approach every single person with compassion and see them as a person with inherent worth and dignity. That is how I do my job, and that is how I live as a Unitarian Universalist. And I believe that this is one of the ways in which we can remember the inherent worth and dignity of every person, is that just as I have needs for safety, love, belonging, connection, purpose, so does this other person. And it is in how we meet those needs that are so different and that give rise to these divisions that keep us apart even now. I think we can do this. I really do. I really believe that we can do this, because if there is one thing that I put my faith in, it is in the human capacity for change, in the human capacity to become better than what we currently are. To believe this is to believe that the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice. And so that is what I put my faith in. Maybe it's misplaced, maybe it's naive, maybe it's idealistic, and yet nonetheless, it is what I believe in. It is what I believe in. And so I believe that you, that I, that all of us as Unitarian Universalists living out our values in the world and asking one another, what is it that you need? What is it that you need? What is it that you need? Do you need love? Do you need courage? Do you need safety? How can I help? How can I build a bridge from me to you? I believe that we as Unitarian Universalists, a pluralistic faith made up of so many different people, united by common values, this is work that we can do. So let's build some bridges. I hope you'll join me. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.
In every Unitarian Universalist congregation I've ever been a part of in North America, I've heard expressed a whole bunch of different needs people seek to have met by their faith community, to have their curiosity engaged, maybe even to spark a sense of wonder, to uplift their spirits and support their practices and rituals, to have their batteries recharged so they can do the hard work of making justice in the world, to engage in intellectual discourse and occasional combativeness, to express themselves as whole people and to have their identity affirmed and valued, or simply for companionship and friendship. There's one thing all of these needs have in common. None of them can be fulfilled in solitude. We need each other's company and presence in order to get any of those universal human needs met. Thank goodness we each have this place, this community whose home is under the beacon, whose power is in its members, diverse enough and generous enough to make sure all these needs can be met simultaneously. Not only do we all have different needs, we have different resources. Some of us can afford to make large annual donations to the general fund, to pay for ministry in the form of staff and programming, and for facilities. And others don't have enough to spare. Thank goodness we have so many among us who give more than just their proportionate share. We need you. We all need you. And we're all grateful for your gifts. I'd like to remind each of you now to send a check into our office in fulfillment of your pledge for this church year. And if you're new to us, even if you haven't been in our building in Kirtland, please consider sending in a donation of any amount to let us know that some need is being met when you join us. And even if you can't afford to send anything, send us a card so we know who you are. Whatever your needs are, whatever your resources are, you are welcome here. And thank you for being here with us today.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Friends, I am so glad that I was able to join you today. Thank you so much for having me here. And I am so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that you are here with all of your needs and all of your wants, here to build bridges. So together, let's build some bridges. Thank you, and blessed be.
We join hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves to an individual religious freedom which transcends all creeds, not to think alike, but to journey together.